Back in the day, Craigslist felt like the internet's version of the Wild West. People met strangers for jobs, apartments, rides, furniture, sometimes without even knowing a last name. And honestly, most people assumed the worst thing that could happen was getting scammed out of a few bucks. But these stories prove something way more disturbing. One girl answered an ad offering free housing from an older man who claimed he just wanted help cleaning his house. At first, it sounded like the perfect escape from her miserable life. But after moving in, she started noticing hidden cameras, strange behavior, and one terrifying secret about the man she was living with. Another guy hired a quiet house cleaner from Craigslist, only to realize someone was secretly entering his home at night while he slept upstairs. And when he finally caught the person inside his house, it wasn't even the same woman he hired. Then there's a guy who drove across town for a ridiculously cheap couch listed online. $45 for a sectional sofa sounded like the deal of the century. Instead, he walked into a setup so horrifying he barely escaped with his life. 3 normal Craigslist posts. 3 people who thought they were making harmless decisions. And 3 situations that turned into absolute nightmares. The weirdest part about this whole thing is that if you looked at my life back then from the outside, you probably would have thought I was just another burnt-out 21-year-old trying to survive adulthood. And honestly, you wouldn't have been wrong. I had basically no relationship with my family anymore. My parents and I barely spoke, my sister wanted nothing to do with me, and most of my friendships were hanging on by a thread. I dropped out of college after my first year because I was completely overwhelmed. And I was working at this tiny vape shop that paid just enough to keep me alive, but not enough to actually move forward in life. Every day felt the exact same. Wake up, work, go home exhausted, repeat. So when I found that Craigslist ad in 2017, it genuinely felt like some kind of miracle. The post was made by a guy named Jackson. He said he was looking for a girl to stay at his house for free in exchange for helping clean and occasionally cooking meals. No kids, no babysitting, no complicated responsibilities, just basic housework in exchange for a free room. At 21 years old, free housing sounds like winning the lottery. The post had around 10 pictures attached. The house looked normal too. Not some creepy abandoned place or giant mansion. Just this slightly old-fashioned middle-class home in a quiet neighborhood. Brown cabinets, older furniture, floral wallpaper. The kind of house your grandparents might live in. But what really grabbed my attention was how easy the whole thing sounded. No background check. No application fee. No long interview process. Just a free room. Looking back now, that should have been the biggest red flag imaginable. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about danger. I was thinking about escape. So I texted the number, and Jackson replied almost immediately. At first, the conversation seemed normal. He asked basic questions about my age, work schedule, whether I was clean and responsible. Then pretty early on, he asked if I was female. The second I answered yes, his messages got noticeably longer. Way friendlier too. He explained that he worked long hours and was rarely home during the day, so he mainly wanted someone to keep the place clean and maybe cook dinner once in a while. He even offered to pay for groceries himself. Honestly, it sounded almost too perfect, like one of those situations where your brain quietly tells you, this feels off, but your desperation keeps talking louder. A few hours later, I drove over to see the place in person. The neighborhood looked completely normal. Kids riding bikes, cars parked neatly in driveways. Nothing sketchy at all. But the second the front door opened, I immediately felt smaller than I expected to. Jackson was way older than I pictured from the texts. Probably around 60. Big guy too, at least 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, gray beard, deep voice. Not exactly the kind of person you'd easily fight off if something went wrong. Still, he acted friendly, almost overly friendly. He gave me a tour of the house, but thinking back now, it was weirdly limited. He only showed me the upstairs guest bedroom and the bathroom I'd be using. Every other room upstairs stayed shut the entire time. I remember asking casually, "Oh, what's in there?" And he just kind of laughed and said storage mostly. At the time, I let it go, which still bothers me to this day, because deep down I think part of me already felt something was wrong. But I ignored it, and 2 days later, I moved in anyway. The first night honestly didn't feel that weird. That's what makes stories like this so dangerous. Nothing starts out looking like a horror movie. If it did, nobody would stay. I unpacked my clothes, set up a few personal things in the guest room, and tried convincing myself this was the fresh start I needed. For the first time in months, I wasn't stressing about rent or bills. I remember laying in bed thinking maybe my luck had finally changed. Then I noticed the cameras. Tiny black cameras mounted high in the corners of the living room and kitchen. At first, I actually tried to rationalize it. A lot of people have security cameras now, right? Ring cameras, baby monitors, indoor security systems. It didn't immediately seem insane, but what bothered me was that Jackson never mentioned them. Not once, and suddenly I started wondering what else he forgot to mention. Still, I stayed. Because when you're broke and emotionally exhausted, your standards for what feels safe start dropping fast. That's the ugly truth nobody talks about. The first week passed pretty quietly after that. Jackson mostly kept to himself. During the day, the house was empty, or at least I thought it was. I cleaned, watched Netflix in the guest room, cooked simple meals, and worked occasional shifts at the vape shop. Honestly, it almost started feeling normal, which is exactly why what happened next hit me so hard. One evening, I made pasta for dinner. Nothing fancy, just basic spaghetti with sauce and garlic bread. Jackson took one bite and his entire face changed, like instantly. He slammed the fork down and goes, "Jesus Christ, this is bland." I remember freezing because the switch in his personality was so sudden. One second he sounded calm, and the next he looked genuinely angry. Then he started going off about how if I was living there for free, the least I could do was make edible food. The way he said it made me feel unbelievably small. I kept apologizing, trying to smooth things over, but then he smiled in this weird way and goes, "Maybe you can make it up to me by cleaning the house in your underwear." He actually laughed after saying it, like it was some harmless joke, but there was something in his eyes that completely killed the humor. I immediately told him I wasn't comfortable with that, and for a second, the room got dead silent. Then he shrugged and acted like I was overreacting. "Relax," he said. "I'm kidding. But you know how sometimes somebody says something as a joke, except you can tell they're testing your reaction? That's exactly what this felt like. That night, I locked myself in my room and texted one of my closest friends everything that happened. Her response came back almost immediately. "You need to get out of there. Seriously. This sounds insane." And deep down, I knew she was right. But moving out wasn't that simple anymore. I didn't really have money saved up. I didn't have family to run back to. Part of me kept trying to convince myself maybe Jackson was just socially awkward or lonely or weird, anything except dangerous. But a few days later, something happened that completely shattered that illusion. And it started in the most random way possible. I was driving home from work when a car behind me started honking aggressively. At first I thought maybe I cut someone off by accident, but then the car kept following me. My stomach dropped. I finally pulled over into a parking lot, and this girl around my age jumped out of the other car looking panicked. The very first thing she asked me was, "Are you living at that house?" And the second she said it, I felt ice run through my entire body. The second that girl said, "Are you living at that house?" everything in my head just froze because she didn't sound confused. She sounded scared, like she already knew the answer. I told her yes, and I'll never forget how her face changed right in that moment. It wasn't relief, it was more like confirmation. Like she was hoping she was wrong, but she wasn't. Then she leaned in and told me something that completely flipped my world upside down. She said I needed to stay away from Jackson, not be careful, not watch yourself. She straight up said, "Stay away from him," and then she dropped the part that made my stomach drop even further. Jackson wasn't even his real name. I remember just standing there in the parking lot trying to process it, like my brain was refusing to accept what I was hearing. She told me she used to be in the exact same situation I was in. Same arrangement, same free housing deal, same promises that sounded too good to question. And then she started describing things that made my skin crawl. Hidden cameras watching her constantly, feeling like she was never truly alone in the house. And the worst part, one night she woke up and realized he had been inside her room while she was sleeping. Not knocking, not asking. Just in there. She also told me something else that hit even harder. He didn't actually have a real job like he claimed. Most of the time, he wasn't even leaving the house. He was still inside while pretending to be gone. That's when everything I thought I understood about my situation started collapsing. All those coincidences suddenly didn't feel like coincidences anymore. The cameras, the way he watched me, the weird comments, the closed-off rooms in the house. It all started forming a picture I really didn't want to see. I asked her what I should do, my voice honestly shaking at that point. She told me the only safe way out was to act normal. Don't confront him, don't tip him off. Just slowly remove my things and leave when I had everything ready. Simple words. But the way she said them made it clear this wasn't just advice, it was survival. That night, I went back to the house like nothing had happened. But my entire mindset had changed. Every sound felt louder. Every shadow felt intentional. I kept replaying everything she told me while trying to act normal in front of Jackson. And then came the moment that destroyed any remaining doubt I had. Before going to bed, I checked my room more carefully than I ever had in my life. That's when I found it. A tiny camera lens hidden through a drilled hole in the closet. My hands went cold instantly. Like actual shock just hit my body all at once. I couldn't sleep at all after that. Every minute felt like I was being watched, and then sometime in the middle of the night I heard my door creak open. Slow, careful, my heart stopped. It was Jackson. He stood there for a second, and I could tell immediately he realized I was awake. He just said, almost casually, that he didn't mean to wake me up, then quietly closed the door and walked away, like nothing weird had just happened. But for me, that was it. That was the moment I stopped pretending this was normal. The next morning, I started planning my exit. After that night, I wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. I was on full alert. Because once you see something like a hidden camera in your room, you don't go back to feeling safe in that place. Not even for a second. The next morning, I acted completely normal around Jackson. That was the hardest part, smiling, talking casually, pretending like nothing had happened while my brain was basically screaming at me to get out right now. But I kept remembering what that girl told me, don't confront him, don't trigger anything, just leave quietly. So I started my exit plan. I didn't pack everything at once. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I started moving a small bag of my things to my car every day. A hoodie here, some clothes there, chargers. Anything I could quietly take without raising suspicion. Every trip felt like I was walking on a tightrope. One wrong moment and everything could have blown up. Meanwhile, Jackson acted normal, almost too normal. Like nothing had changed. He still made small talk, still acted like everything was fine. But now every interaction felt different. Like I was finally seeing him instead of just being around him. 3 days passed like that. Slow, careful, constant tension, and then I finally reached the point where I had most of my important stuff out of the house. That night, I decided I was going to leave soon. But before I could execute the final step, something else happened that still gives me chills thinking about it. I went back to my room late, trying to act like I was settling in for the night. I double-checked everything again, like I've been doing constantly now. That's when I found it. The closet again, same place, same hidden angle, but this time, I looked deeper. And I realized something that made my stomach drop. That camera wasn't just placed there randomly. It was positioned perfectly to see my entire bed. Every inch of it. I remember just standing there, not moving, trying to process how long that had been there without me noticing. Every night I slept in that room, I wasn't alone, not even close. I don't even remember how long I stood there, but I do remember one thing very clearly. My brain switched into pure survival mode. I wasn't thinking about fear anymore. I was thinking about escape. I packed what I could that night and barely slept at all. Every sound in the house felt heavier than usual. Every floorboard felt like it meant something. And then came the final night. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard movement outside my door again. Slow footsteps, not rushed, not accidental, intentional. I froze completely in bed. The handle didn't turn this time. But I knew someone was there, standing right outside. And after a few seconds, the footsteps slowly moved away again. That was the moment I knew I couldn't wait another day. The next morning, I didn't hesitate. I loaded everything I could into my car, one trip at a time like before, but faster, sharper, no more hesitation. Every second inside that house felt like borrowing time I didn't have. And then finally, I left. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't explain anything. I just drove. And I kept driving until I was far enough away that I finally felt like I could breathe again. But even then, I wasn't fully safe yet. Because about a week later, I got an email notification. Someone had tried to log into one of my old accounts from a location in the same town where Jackson's house was. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a weird living situation. It was something much worse. If you've ever hired someone off Craigslist, you already know there's this weird mix of convenience and risk that comes with it. Most of the time, it's totally normal. You get what you pay for. Life moves on. No big deal. That's exactly what I thought was happening here. I live alone in a 2-floor house, and my job schedule was getting completely out of control. Long hours, constant deadlines, no energy left for basic chores. My place slowly started turning into one of those situations where you tell yourself, I'll clean it this weekend. And then you just don't. So I decided to hire a house cleaner. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just someone to come in, clean up, and leave. I found a Craigslist post from a woman offering independent cleaning services. Cash only, flexible schedule. Simple enough. I emailed her, and she responded the next morning. Short, polite messages. Nothing strange. She seemed professional enough, so we set a time for her to come by. She showed up that following Thursday. The first thing I noticed was how quiet she was. Not rude, just extremely reserved. Barely made eye contact. The kind of person who seems like they're trying not to take up space in a room. I walked her through the house, explained what needed to be done, and told her she didn't need to worry about my office room. She just nodded and wrote things down. Before she left, she asked me one simple question. "What time do you usually get home from work?" I told her around 6 or 7 p.m. She wrote that down too, and then she got to work. That night when I came home, I'll be honest, the place looked great. Floors cleaned, kitchen wiped down, everything in order. Exactly what I needed. I paid her in cash, thanked her, and didn't think much of it. At first, for about a week, everything felt normal, almost too normal. But then, small things started happening. At first, I thought I was just imagining it. A cabinet slightly open when I was sure I closed it. A chair pulled out just a few inches from the table. A towel in the downstairs bathroom that felt slightly damp even though I hadn't used it. Nothing big enough to immediately worry about, but just enough to make you pause. And then came the night sounds. It started small, just a soft sound downstairs in the middle of the night. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to what sounded like a faint thump from the kitchen area. Not loud enough to feel like a break-in, but definitely enough to wake you up and make you lie there staring at the ceiling. I remember just thinking, it's probably nothing. Pipes, house settling. Something like that. So I ignored it, and honestly, that's what most people would do. A couple nights later, it happened again. This time it sounded like a cabinet door closing, slow, controlled. Not random. That's when I started paying a little more attention. But even then, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I mean, who immediately thinks Simono might be inside my house at night? That's not a normal thought you want to entertain. Still, things kept building. Over the next week, I started noticing more small changes. A kitchen cabinet left open just a crack. A dining chair pulled out like someone had been sitting there recently. A hand towel downstairs that felt slightly damp even though I hadn't touched it. Every single thing on its own felt explainable. But together, it started forming a pattern I didn't like. Then came the footsteps, soft, slow, almost careful. On the wooden floor downstairs at night. I started lying in bed more alert, trying to convince myself I was just tired or imagining things. But once your brain locks onto a possibility like that, it's hard to unhear every little sound. Eventually, I started sleeping with my bedroom door closed. Not locked at first, just closed. But I was definitely more aware now. And then one night, I heard it again. Movement. Right outside my bedroom door, I went completely still. No breathing, no movement, just listening. I stared at the door, waiting for the handle to turn. Seconds passed. Nothing happened. Eventually, the sound faded away. The next morning, I tried telling myself I was overthinking everything. That I was letting my imagination run wild because I was stressed and sleep-deprived. But then I went to the kitchen. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. One of my spare house keys was missing. Just gone. From the junk drawer, I stood there for a full minute trying to process it because I knew exactly where I had left it, and I knew I hadn't moved it. That was the moment I stopped feeling unsure and started feeling watched. And that's when I decided I needed to find out what was really going on inside my house. Because something was clearly happening at night, and it wasn't random, it was intentional. After finding that missing house key, everything changed for me. It stopped being weird little incidents and started feeling like someone was actually inside my life when I wasn't looking. And that's a terrifying shift to go through alone in your own home. I couldn't shake the thought that whoever took that key didn't just accidentally end up with it. That meant they had access. Real access, not just once, but whenever they wanted. So I started thinking differently. Instead of just reacting to things, I needed proof. Because at that point, I didn't want to believe I was losing my mind. I decided to test it. The next morning, I left for work like normal. Same routine, same time, nothing suspicious. I even acted a little tired just in case someone was watching me leave. But instead of going to work, I parked my car one street over, and I waited. Then I went back through the back entrance, quietly. My heart was already racing before I even stepped inside. I stayed upstairs and tried to stay completely still, listening. Minutes passed, nothing, then it hit 11 a.m., and I heard it. The front door. Unlocking, very slowly, very carefully. My stomach dropped instantly. Footsteps followed right after. Soft, familiar, confident. Not like a stranger breaking in. Like someone who belonged there. I moved closer to the stair railing just enough to see down into the living room, and that's when I saw her. The cleaner, the same woman I had hired, but something was wrong immediately. She wasn't carrying any cleaning supplies. No bucket, no sprays, no vacuum, nothing. She just walked in like she lived there. like she had done it 100 times before. She went straight to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took a drink like it was completely normal. Then she sat down at my table, just sat there, looking around, comfortable, like she wasn't working in my house, like she belonged in it. Then she picked up a framed photo I had on the table. It was me and my brother. She stared at it for a long time. Too long, no expression. Just watching it, and I remember thinking, what the hell is going on right now? Because this wasn't cleaning. This wasn't normal at all. Then she stood up and started walking toward the stairs, directly toward where I was hiding. And that's when I made a decision that I can still feel in my chest even now. I had to confront her, because whatever this was, it couldn't keep going. I stepped forward and opened the bedroom door quickly, fast. Confident. Ready to demand answers. But the second I saw her face, everything stopped. Because the woman standing in front of me wasn't the same person I hired. For a second, my brain just refused to process what I was seeing, because she looked similar, but she wasn't the same woman. Same general build, same kind of quiet presence. But the face was different. The eyes especially cold in a way I can't really explain. Like she wasn't surprised to see me at all. We just stood there. No immediate reaction. Just this heavy silence between two people who both clearly understood something was very, very wrong. Then she slowly turned around. No panic, no running, no explanation. Like my appearance didn't change anything for her. She walked back down the stairs at an almost casual pace, went through the front door, and left. That was it, like she was done. I stood there for a few seconds just trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. Then I grabbed my phone and called 911. My voice was shaky, but I told them everything I could. Break in, suspicious activity. Someone entering my home using a key I didn't authorize. The police came pretty quickly after that. I walked them through the house, explained what I'd been noticing for weeks. The missing key, the sounds at night, everything. But the strange part was, even as I was talking, I could tell how it sounded. It sounded unbelievable, like paranoia. Like I was missing something obvious. The officers checked the doors, windows, locks, took notes, asked a lot of questions. But there was no obvious sign of forced entry, which made everything even harder to explain. Eventually, one of the officers asked me something that stuck with me. "Did you give a key to anyone else?" I said no immediately. Then he paused and added, "Sometimes people like that don't work alone." That sentence hit differently, because it wasn't an accusation. It wasn't reassurance either. It was just experience. After they left, I didn't feel better. I felt exposed. Like the house I thought I controlled wasn't really mine anymore. That same day, I changed every single lock in the house. Front door, back door, everything. I didn't sleep properly for a long time after that. And I never hired another cleaner again because whatever happened in that house, it wasn't just about cleaning. It was something much more organized than that. Something I accidentally let inside. Back in 2008, Craigslist was nothing like it is today. It wasn't just a marketplace, it was basically the Wild West of the internet. No real safety systems, no real trust checks, just people meeting strangers based on a post and a phone number. And somehow most of us just accepted that risk like it was normal. I was in my early 20s at the time, and I'll be honest, I was way too trusting. Life wasn't going great for me either. I had just been dumped by my girlfriend, and it wasn't a clean breakup. She kicked me out, and suddenly I was bouncing between friends' places trying to figure out where I was going to land next. I didn't have a stable place. I didn't have a plan. I was just trying to get by. That's when a friend told me to check Craigslist. "People sell furniture cheap all the time," he said. "Sometimes you can even find rooms for rent." So I started scrolling, and that's when I saw it. A post from a guy named Keith. He was selling a full sectional sofa for $45, $45. In my situation, that sounded like a miracle. Furniture was expensive, and I basically had nothing. So my brain immediately went into this as a steal mode instead of this as suspicious mode. I messaged him right away. He replied pretty fast, said he was moving out of state for a new job and just needed to get rid of things quickly. No story beyond that. Simple, clean. Almost too convenient. But I didn't question it much. We set up a time to meet that same evening, around 9 p.m., which, looking back now, is already kind of a red flag on its own. The location he gave me was in a really run-down part of town. Dark streets, barely any streetlights, houses that looked half abandoned. Even driving there, something about it felt off. But I kept telling myself it was fine. It's just furniture. Quick pickup, in and out. No big deal. I pulled up outside the house and immediately noticed how empty and worn down it looked. The kind of place where you don't feel comfortable turning your engine off right away. I tried calling Keith's number. No answer. Just an automated message saying the number was no longer in service. That's when I first thought, all right, this might be a scam. I was about to leave, but then my phone buzzed from a different number. I almost didn't answer that call. Something about it just felt off already. The number wasn't the one Keith used in the Craigslist post, and after hearing that disconnected message, I was seconds away from just driving off. But curiosity got me. I picked up, and the voice on the other end sounded calm. Almost friendly. He apologized immediately, saying his phone had broken and he was using a work phone instead. He told me he was still there, still ready to sell the couch, and that I should just come around to the back of the house. That should have been another red flag right there. Who tells a stranger to meet them in the back of a dark house at 9 p.m.? But at that point, I was already there. I'd already driven across town. And honestly, I didn't want to feel like I wasted the trip, so I got out of my car. The back of the house was even worse than the front. No lights, no movement. Just this heavy silence that made everything feel wrong. I tried calling the work phone again just to confirm I wasn't being paranoid. And that's when my stomach dropped. Because instead of hearing a ring through my phone, I heard a ringtone coming from somewhere behind me. I froze. Then I turned slowly toward the bushes near the back fence, and that's when Keith came running out. Out of the darkness, waving a flip phone like nothing was strange about any of this. He was skinny, probably late 50s, long white hair tied back in a messy ponytail. He smelled awful like cigarettes and something stale I can't even describe properly, and he acted way too casual. Like we were meeting in a parking lot during the day, not standing behind a dark house at night. He apologized again and said he'd just been getting rid of some old food out back, which didn't make much sense, but I was already too deep into the situation to fully step away cleanly. Then he told me the couch was inside and asked me to help him open the back door. He said it stuck sometimes. And then he added something that still sticks with me. Just put your shoulder into it. Give it a good push. That was the moment my instincts finally kicked in. Something about the way he said it felt rehearsed, but I didn't fully back out. Not yet. I leaned forward, put my shoulder against the door, and pushed. And that's when the door suddenly opened from the other side. The second that door gave way, everything happened way too fast. I lost my balance immediately and stumbled straight inside that dark room. There was no light. No clear visibility. Just this sudden drop in sound like the outside world got cut off behind me before I even had time to stand up properly. I heard Keith shout from behind me. Now. And that's when it turned into chaos. Two other guys came out of the darkness like they were already waiting there, not rushing in like random people, more like they were positioned, ready. One of them was huge. I mean, noticeably bigger than me. The kind of guy that instantly makes your brain switch into panic mode. They grabbed me before I could fully process what was happening. One pinned me down hard. The other moved in fast, and I could hear Keith yelling and moving closer, like he was feeding off what was happening. I remember getting kicked hard while I was still trying to figure out where the exit even was. They were shouting something about tape. I heard the sound of duct tape ripping open. That sound alone made everything feel even more real. That's when my survival instincts finally kicked in. I started fighting back however I could. Not clean, not strategic. Just pure panic and adrenaline. During the struggle, my phone somehow hit the floor and accidentally speed-dialed my friend. And suddenly I could hear it. From the phone, my friend's voice. Hello. Hello. That sound changed everything in my head, because now I wasn't just trapped in that room. Someone else was connected to what was happening. I yelled into the phone, trying to get through the chaos. I'm at the back of the house. Come in. I need help. It wasn't even fully planned. It was a gamble. A bluff. Anything to create confusion. And it worked. For a split second, the pressure on me loosened. The big guy hesitated. He looked toward Keith like suddenly they weren't fully sure what was going on anymore. That 1 second was all I needed. I ripped free from their grip, scrambled up, and ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. Just ran straight out of that house and into my car. My hands were shaking so badly I barely got the door locked before I started the engine. And the moment I hit the gas, I saw one of them running after me, trying to get my door. But I was already gone. I just kept driving. No destination. No plan. Just distance. I drove for hours that night before finally stopping somewhere safe enough to think again, and that's when it fully hit me. That cheap couch deal wasn't a deal at all. It was a setup, and I had no idea what they really planned to do if I hadn't gotten away.